There it is. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I really needed the coffee. I'm not even going to make excuses. I needed the coffee. We're going to get this thing kicked off, and I mean, it is late night coffee talk. So, I mean, what? I don't know that there's a better way to start off than with a big swig, right? I needed it because someone woke up. I don't know, a lot of someone's, and decided that today needed to be Monday all over again. And look, I'm up to the challenge. I'm up to the challenge. You guys want to tsunami me? That's okay. Handling it. Anyway, welcome back to this week's edition of Late Night Coffee Talk. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement. And this is, as I said, Late Night Coffee Talk. This is that time in the middle of the week where I take a break from working on making Texas independence a reality. And I pour yet another cup of this sweet, sweet productivity juice. Fire up the camera and I answer your questions. That's right. We get to have a conversation. I don't know how many of these we've done. That's something we probably need to check, because we want to make sure that we exclude times that we were off or whatever. But yeah, we need to check that out. But look, I can tell you that very few people engaged in the world of Texas politics do anything like this whatsoever. Fire it up, have a conversation, let you guys out there ask your questions, whatever they may be. Even if I've heard them 9 million times before, you guys have unprecedented access, and you can ask me whatever, right? If it's about, it could be Texas, it could be TNM, be Texas politics, it could be current events, it could be personal stuff. It's whatever it is. But for those of you that are not first timers, you know that already. But for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. And hopefully you get the gist of it. For the next hour, I will be answering your questions and talking about things that are important to Texas and Texans. So that being said, how do you participate? Well, it's quite simple. We are obviously broadcasting across multiple channels, right? A couple different YouTube pages, a couple different Facebook pages, couple different let's see what else we're on, a couple different X accounts. We are on Rumble, so we're all over the place. So I'll give you a quick rundown. If you're watching on one of the YouTube pages and want to ask your question, just drop it in the chat. Right while you're there, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And of course, super chats are active if you'd like to make a contribution. And also, as you have learned over the last couple of weeks, channel memberships are available on YouTube. As a matter of fact, let me just go ahead and get this out of the way right now. Welcome to our newest member who joined before we even started the live stream tonight. So thank you there, Tacitus Kilgore. Really do appreciate you becoming a channel member here on our YouTube channel. But drop your questions in the chat, regardless of where you are on YouTube. Additionally, if you're watching us on X, which is oddly enough, for a while, X was the primary platform where people were watching, but now it is yet again shifting across all of these different channels. It's smeared everywhere. But if you're watching us on X, be sure to drop your question in the chat there. And while you're there, be sure to follow us and be sure to share this with everyone who's following you as well. If you're watching us on Facebook, quite simple. Drop your question in the comments on this video and be sure to like and comment and share while you're there as well. All of these things really help us defeat the algorithmic discrimination that people like us have a tendency to face. And, it just helps. Even when the live stream is over with, it really helps because the recordings are available and it will continue to show. I mean, we get a lot more people on the replays for these things a lot of times than we do the lives. And that's because there are people out there that don't get the notifications or whatever. So you got that as well. If you're watching on Rumble, you don't really have a way to do that because they don't have the integration built yet. But when they do, you'll be able to comment on the video there and it go into our little question hopper. But look, if none of those are for you, down at the bottom of the page, you're going to see this crawler. And at some point you will see an email address that says coffeetalk@thetnm.org. Again, that's coffeetalk@thetnm.org. You can email your questions in. And in fact, many of you did. Wow, look at this. Here's Ron right out of the gate gifting 10 channel memberships to people that are watching the live stream tonight. He did a very similar thing a couple of weeks ago. And so, Ron, thank you so much for that. So, look, if you are one of the lucky recipients of those gifted channel memberships, be sure to thank Ron in the chat. I'm sure, man, that's just, that's phenomenal. Thank you. It helps, these super chats, these memberships, these help us continue to produce quality content for you guys. And we do have, as I said last week, a lot more coming. Production's been slower than I would like, but it's happening. So, it's coming. But thank you for that, Ron. Really do appreciate it. And you guys be sure to thank him in chat. Okay, so let's do this. Before we jump off, we have got, we got a big bundle of questions via email this week, and I am going to try to get to as many as I possibly can. But look, I think I really can't go. I don't know that I can get started without addressing a couple of things right out of the gate. And oddly enough, one of those is not going to be perhaps the impending Third World War, or technically the second, if you consider the Second World War basically just never really ended after the first, and so it's sort of like World War 1.5, and so this would be version 2.0, I guess. It's best not to get too technical about such things. But look, I got to tell you, what the podcast episode that's getting ready to drop on Texas News, you guys are going to absolutely dig it, especially if you followed the quote unquote No Kings protests over last weekend. I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount because I don't want to spoil the episode, but essentially I'm going to be breaking down exactly why those protests, quote, demonstrations should be considered a flop. And what's going to be interesting is I'm going to be using the textbook essentially for these sorts of things to show how it was an absolute flop on every level, and what people like us that want to see actual real political change to put power back in the hands of the people, Article 1, Section 2, Texas Constitution style, what lessons we can learn from that abject failure. But I got to say, look, this is going to be courtesy of Michael Quinn Sullivan. MQS braved the Austin rally on the south steps of the Capitol to produce probably what I think is my favorite video clip from the No Kings rally. Luckily, they didn't turn into the No Kings riots unless you lived, I guess, on the West Coast. But the No Kings rally on the south steps of the Capitol, they did have a nice turnout. They did. You have to give it to them. They had a great turnout. But for what purpose? I want you to look at this video clip, and I want you to explain to me what it is that this protest is about. See if this enlightens you in any whatsoever. I know. Hang on. Her shirt says resist dance, like resistance, but resist dance. And only if she could. Look, by golly, she was having a wonderful time. She was having a good old time. Look, when you can combine your two favorite things, Zumba and progressive politics, that's her two favorite things. She's having a high odario. But tell me, what in the world, what was the message that was being sent there? Get your cardio in. I don't know, but we'll be covering that on the podcast episode for Texas News Podcast. Be sure to check that out when it drops. If you are not subscribed already, if you're subscribed here, we drop it on YouTube, but also we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that podcasts are distributed, and you're not going to want to miss that one. But that was a fun one for me. I have gotten an enormous amount of enjoyment out of just replaying that a lot. And it just means I probably have a weird sense of humor. Uh, Additionally, the second thing before I start getting to your questions, um, we've had, and this is going to knock out a good swath of them that I had, both not just for Coffee Talk, but throughout the rest of my life that happens on the outside of this 1 hour. Is people want to know what is the status on House Bill 1056, which is the gold currency bill. The not going to go into it. We've talked about it on previous episodes. There is a podcast episode that talks about the transactional gold bill specifically. So go look through that and watch that. If you haven't seen it already, you need to watch it so you can understand why it is so big for the Texit process. But let me just knock out a big swath of these questions about 1056. So 1056 was transmitted to the governor on June the 1st. Okay, so the way that it works, and I'm gonna help a bunch of you out that are saying things on social media that are just not the way things are. Okay, so what happens is if a bill is transmitted to the governor 10 days before the session ends, greater than 10 days, then he's got a certain amount of time where he can veto it or sign off on it or ignore it before it becomes law. Okay. And that's the part we're going to talk about here in a second. But if it is less than that amount of time before the close of the session, he has 20 days. So essentially, you've got House Bill 1056, which was transmitted to the governor one day before the session closed. So boom, it's done. Now he's got 20 days. So because the session closed June the 2nd, essentially the bill was transmitted to him on the 2nd, will be when they say. He effectively has he has until the 22nd. So he has about 3 days to determine what he's going to do with it. Now, what are his options? His options are he can sign it, and you guys know he's been signing bills. The big ones, he's been going around doing photo ops and having press conferences and things like that. He can veto it, which essentially says, I am vetoing this. This will not go into law. So he has to physically do that. Now, the confusion comes for a lot of people where they confuse what we do here in Texas with how it works on the federal side. And those are different things, right? On the federal side, if the president doesn't sign a bill, it is considered within the time frame, it's considered what's called a pocket veto. It dies without the president's signature. But here in Texas, it is the opposite. If the governor doesn't sign it, so in other words, no veto, but also no signature, after 20 days, it goes into law. So, essentially one of two things is going to happen come the 22nd or before. Abbott will sign the bill and it will become law, or he will, one of three things. Well, he will do one of two things. Well, three. Yeah, let's say three. Let's do three. He will sign it and it will become law immediately when he signs it. He will veto it, in which case the legislature cannot override his veto because the legislature is no longer in session. Or number three, he will do absolutely nothing with it, in which case on the 22nd, House Bill 1056 becomes law and Texas has transactional gold, right? Or at least the program to make it happen. So hopefully that clarifies that. When I see some folks out there, and not just on 1056, right? I'm talking about some of the discussion around SB3 and some of this other legislation that he hasn't signed yet, some of these big things. I see people referring to Abbott doing a pocket veto, and it's like that's federal. That's not how it works here. So let's just get that squared away, and hopefully you guys out there can go out and combat some of the misinformation that's flying around about these things, because there is a ton of it, and so that'll give you hopefully a little bit of an encapsulated view of what's going on with that. All right, so let's get to some of the questions. I've got a passel full of email, a passel of them in email. So let me address those real quick. I'm going to go down here and find the first one because it is way on down here. Okay. Boom, boom, and there we go. Yeah, cool. All right, here it is. We have got, okay. All right, so this is from, this is obviously there's no name attached to it. It says, howdy, we all know the collapse of the United States is inevitable. Is there a plan in place for a forced Texit before we, the citizens of Texas, will be able to vote, and so on? That is, to whom it may concern, that is a very simple question packed with a lot of information. So, number one, you're right. The collapse of the United States is kind of inevitable. I mean, this slouching toward Gomorrah has been happening for quite some time, and so I think that anyone who is good at watching trends understands that even if you don't look at the trends of the United States, it is just a historical trend where empires, once they achieve the status of being empire, they decline, they decay, they erode, they fall apart, they can't hold for innumerable reasons. But I mean, there have been books written about that. I'm not going to get into it. But your question is there a plan in place for a forced Texit before we will be able to vote, and so on? That's an interesting question, because when you ask if there is a plan in place, the question is really by who? Do we have plans for what that could look like? Yeah, to a certain degree, but we can only act a certain way as in organizations, as effectively, if you wanted to classify something, as pressure groups, as advocacy organizations. This is one of the reasons that we push not just the referendum, but policies that move Texas closer to being functionally and operationally and structurally like a self-governing independent nation, to close that gap between the status quo and being fully politically, culturally, and economically independent. And the reason for that is really, when the time comes, you don't want that to be a far jump. Now, that being said, I say this all the time. If people understood how close we were to being operationally, functionally, structurally like a self-governing independent nation, they would worry a whole lot less about things like, what are we going to do about a currency, and what are we going to do about this, and but what about, right? They would worry a lot less about that and more about pushing toward making Texas independent, just full on, because we're so close, and frankly, better so than many, that are many governments or many nation states that are already independent and self-governing. We can bag on Texas politicians and the Texas government all we want to, but the fact of the matter is that Texas is closer to being an independent nation now than it ever has been. Now, can we credit these people, these electeds? Some can get some credit, but by and large, no. I mean, they've been drug kicking and screaming. As the TNM has shifted the Overton window, our positions have become the mainstream positions that must be adopted. So, the fact of the matter is that even if there is a collapse, right? So let's just take your presupposition that there's a collapse. Just because there's a collapse doesn't mean the institution or the laws of it disappear, right? Texas will be a state of the United States until the United States as an entity ceases to exist, or Texans vote to change that status. And so you see this, when people talk about the dissolution of the Soviet Union, they basically compress a decade of things that happened into like two sentences. And what you see is, during the dissolution of the Soviet Union, it's not like these people just spun off and spun up, right? The vast majority ended up having referendums to solidify their decision to be independent, because the institution and the government of the Soviet Union was no longer able to do it. So, to be able to hold things together, to try to hold the Soviet Union together. So these countries, even though they were already, by virtue of the fact that the center had collapsed in the Soviet Union, these other countries were effectively already independent, already running their affairs, but they still were connected by law as entities to the Soviet Union. So you saw popular referendums in these Soviet republics that then became former Soviet republics. Well, it's a very similar situation here. So regardless of what that looks like on the path out, we want to be, Texas wants to be as strong as we possibly can to prepare for that, that inevitability. We want to be in a position to consciously choose independence. And we want to be best suited is I guess we want to be in the best situation possible if that decision is forced upon us sooner rather than later. So that's the answer to that one. So thank you for that question. That was a good one. I like topics like that. Those are fun. Okay. This is Dylan. Dylan said, no, this is PJ. Sorry. PJ says, won't there be retaliation from the federal government if Texas declares independence? This is probably the reason a good few of Texans have kept their eyes away from this movement. You would, that's a good question, PJ, but that might have been true probably in the first 10 years, maybe not even 8 years, 9 years of the existence of the TNM, right? So we were founded in 2005. So you could get into, say, I would say probably, well, maybe even up to 2015, right? Somewhere in that ballpark, where the people were, there was where you could say a significant number of people were held back by their concern related to retaliation by the federal government. But the thing to understand is that it's not Texas declaring independence. It's the people of Texas going and voting in a referendum to reassert our status as an independent nation, and then following through the process that is spun off because of that vote, right? There are a lot of people that have this misconception. Typically, it's people that are kind of new to this idea or just exploring it for the first time, where they look at this issue and they say, well, this is like, the 13 colonies, and we're going to write a Declaration of Independence, and, we're going to shoot the middle finger to the king, and, then we're going to, that's not how this works. Or they, particularly on the other side of the equation, the people that are opposed to this, they want to look at Fort Sumter and the Civil War, and it's like, that's not what this is at all. This is not the 18th or 19th century. This is the 21st century, and in that there is a whole lot to unpack about why the situation is very different. I would make a strong suggestion, PJ, that you go visit texitnow.org and go check it out, because that question and a lot more are answered in depth. And I do believe if you were to go to the Texian Partisan news site under the analysis section, there is a massive breakdown, like a I don't know, 20 or 30 page analysis of why the federal government is not in a position to retaliate if we follow the process that we have laid out, which is, pushing Texas operationally and functionally toward independence, having the referendum open, fair, free. We roll the numbers through that, and then following the process that comes after that, which is addressing constitutional issues, statutory issues, international covenants, treaties, and agreements, and finally negotiated issues. And so, we follow that path. It leaves almost no room whatsoever for the federal government to do anything pear-shaped. And the good news about that is if they decide to do so, they are in such a position that they are at the greatest disadvantage, much greater than Texas. But at the end of the day, look, I don't, and let me just speak to this personally. I don't let fear of retaliation prevent me from doing and supporting the right things or speaking truth. I just don't. And I knew August 24th, 1996, when I crossed the proverbial line in the sand, that there would probably be repercussions for people like me. People that are vocal, that are out there, that are talking about this. I knew and suspected, and I went in eyes wide open. But at the end of the day, is fear of retaliation a good reason for not doing the right thing? And if that's the case, then we've got a whole other conversation that we need to have about, who has the moral imperative here and who has the moral high ground, and what morals or principles are we willing to sacrifice um, for fear of retaliation. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not willing to sacrifice a single one of my morals or my principles, my faith, my belief. I'm not willing. I'm not willing to silence the truth. I'm not willing to sit silently and idly by while Texas continues to follow the Titanic to the bottom of the North Atlantic. And if that means there's retaliation against me, so be it. I'm pretty sure the people in the Alamo realized when they holed up in that Adobe mission, there was probably going to be some retaliation from the Mexican government, but they did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. And they paid the ultimate price for it. And, when you look at historically, when you look at independence and nationalist movements, you're going to see a core of people that are going to be there, like they're ready to charge the gates of hell with a squirt pistol. And they won't be broken. I mean, the church is full of martyrs, people that were willing to give their lives before they would renounce their faith. I mean, this is the thing. And so, you have religious and spiritual martyrs, and you have physical, political martyrs and economic. You have secular martyrs. I mean, this is the reality. And so, what does that honestly, though, say about how we feel about the federal government, that they would even be willing to retaliate in whatever way possible when the people of Texas go to the polls, and not through violence or revolution or a coup or any kind of crazy nonsense like that, but go have a vote and say, we want to be independent like the other 200 self-governing independent nations around the world. We want that. We want to stand as a peer. We were promised that. We're guaranteed that. We want basically what was guaranteed to us. And when the people of Texas go to vote for it, what does it say that we believe even remotely that the federal government would retaliate? Well, I think that tells us everything we need to know about the federal government right there. And that tells us that we don't need to, kind of sit back and kind of cower from that sort of retaliation or fear of retaliation. We need to recognize the monster for who it is and act with haste and alacrity to make Texas independence a reality, because those are the actions of a place that we would refer to as a state sponsor of terror, right? Or, we think about that kind of activity coming from an autocratic regime. So, if that's what we're attached to, then maybe it's time that we accelerate our program, at least for each of us personally. So anyway, PJ, thank you for that question. Okay, so let's get down here. Oh, you guys are starting to throw them in the chat now, and I'm almost out of coffee. We're at the midway point. I'm almost out of coffee. That's not a good sign. All right, lightning round. James wants to know, when did Sam Houston say his famous quote? I'm assuming the quote that you're referring to is the one that we utilize all the time, that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. So I will tell you how the TNM came to use that quote. We had already started the TNM. TNM, like I said, was founded in 2005. And of course, there was a lot. We always talked about Article 1, Section 1, Article 1, Section 2 in those early days. I mean, those were very informative. But it wasn't until after the foundation of the TNM, and we were getting ready to design the first TNM t-shirt for our people to wear, right? And it's the one we still do today. It's got the Zavala flag with the word independence written under it, okay? And so, we had that. We knew that we needed a symbol for our organization. So we said Zavala flag, the word independence. It's a mashup of the Zavala flag and the Captain Scott flag. And we said, look, just like our logo and our symbol means something, the shirt, the symbol of the movement needs to mean something. And that was the flag that we chose. And that's how we designed it. Zavala, Captain Scott, right? But the problem came when we wanted to put something on the back of the shirt. We said, look, we need a really great quote. Texas Independence Now. So we went through all and said, look, what we need something inspiring from one of the founders of the Republic of Texas. We need something from the Revolution or one of the founders. So we went on a research campaign. We said, we got to get this right. There can be there's no room for error on this one. So we started this process and came across the quote that Sam Houston said, Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. And I thought, wait a minute, how have we never seen this quote before? Well, we found it on the website of the museum that's out there near Washington, Nebraska. I think it's called Star of the Republic Museum. And so they had the quote. And so I picked up the phone and called and said, look, you guys have got this quote on your website. We're trying to source this thing. And I mean, you got to think, the internet and everything's come a long way since then. So, we could probably just look it up, right? But at the time, we just called the museum and said, look, you guys have this quote included on your website. Where did it come from? Because we want to be able to, it was such a powerful quote. We wanted to be able to tuck into it. If Houston's saying things like this, I want to know what the context was. And I said, and so they got back to me and said, we're trying to source it too. We know it exists. And the guy that I talked to is super nice, but you could tell he was not like a researcher or anything else. He said, but what he said was, it was obvious to him that the quote came sometime right after the annexation of Texas. But beyond that, they never got back to us with any information about where it came from. They did authenticate the quote, but he could give me no additional context. So, that's where we got it. We got it from the Star of the Republic Museum out there at Washington, Nebraska, right from their website. And that was the quote that wound up on the back of our shirts and on all of our stuff, because for us, it represented, essentially what Houston, I think, knew was going to happen eventually, is that Texas would be put in a position where it would again have to, lift its head and stand among the nations, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because I could spend a lot of time breaking down that quote. I'm not going to do it because that's for the more wonkish. Maybe I'll do a special video for our YouTube channel members. But there's so much kind of behind the words that were chosen by Houston in that moment. I've said before that I believe that it was effectively a political prophecy. Not in the sort of the biblical terms of prophecy, but an understanding that people have where they can look at, where something is and where it will eventually end up in the future. There was some ability to see down the road to say that, whatever happened in Texas would not be able to be contained by what's happening. It would not be able to continue to grow in greatness if attached to the United States. Now, some people will counter with the fact that Houston was very opposed to Texas withdrawing from the Union in the 1860s. And I concede that point, but I don't think that it is his words about Texas lifting its head and standing among the nations were about the 1860s. I think he was thinking much farther down the road as to when this would happen. And honestly, I think he was looking to our day and our time, where the United States would grow beyond its bounds, the federal government driving, essentially rending the Constitution to atoms. I think he saw that the possibility or probability existed that in the future, the federal government, as he knew it, would transform into a federal government that was more akin to what they had to fight to break away from Mexico, this centralizing of power. So that's a lot to answer your question. That's where it came from, James. And we'll do a little more digging. I would like to find the entirety of that passage, like where that quote came from, and maybe get it posted on the website. But thank you for that question, James. I said this was going to be a lightning round. That was definitely a lie, because that was a long answer to that question. Okay. Okay, let's take this one really quickly. All right. Let's see. 4 of the West Canadian provinces are on the path to secession from the Canadian Confederation. Alberta is now collecting the petition signatures needed for their plebiscite, as TNM connected to them. It's a shame that we're not interacting right now, back and forth, because I would say define connected. I actually talked about this a little bit, I think, last week. Obviously, we've gotten a lot of questions about, and there's been a lot of discussion about what's happening in Alberta. Yeah, in fact, we did have a question last week specifically dealing with how Alberta's informing the process here. And this is when I got to talk about how their path is a lot straighter and smoother than ours, simply by virtue of the context in which it's taking place. That being said, is TNM connected to them? Connected, if by connected you mean like, did we start them, or did we foment them? The answer is certainly not. Are we communicating with them? Yes, and it also depends on how you define them, because you're, as I talked about last week, you've essentially got 3 organizations that kind of banded together to push for a petition, to push for independence. And then you have the Alberta Prosperity Project that's also pushing that direction. And so, it's kind of like, well, who is the them? Who are, which one? All of these are extraordinarily complex. And I'll be honest, I think the Alberta guys were caught unaware. I mean, they were plodding along and having a rough go of it, and all of a sudden, all of this within a span of about 6 months drops in their lap, and they're scrambling to play catch up with capacity building and everything else. So it's going to look a little bit like a flea flicker play for a while. But that being said, we do maintain communication with independence movements that are not that are not us. We have an active program for that. We had, matter of fact, we had a big chuckle the other day because one group of the, the quote, as the media called them, Mexican secessionists, the guys that are working on the 9 northern states of Mexico, they sent out a big announcement that they're having a big organizing meeting, and we got a chuckle out of it because when we announced that we were going to be giving them assistance and help and consultation and all that sort of thing, the media piped up and essentially said that they didn't exist. And so here they are with their organ. So we got a big laugh out of it. Anyway, thanks for the question. Okay, so let's do this. Let's get back over here to let's see here. Let's get over here to the email. Okay. Robert asks, are you/we going to endorse Don Huffines for Texas Comptroller? So let me answer each part of the slash. So I guess you're talking about me. I have not made any personal endorsements for quite some time. However, that being said, this might be the election cycle where that changes. So take that as you will. Now you say we, and then you say Texit. Okay, Texit is a process. Texit and the TNM are different things. TNM is the Texas Nationalist Movement. Texit is the process. That's the thing we work on. So I'm going to assume you're meaning TNM, right? The TNM is a 501c4. We don't endorse, right? However, there is a PAC, which is called TNM PAC, which does endorse. Now, that being said, the only candidate for comptroller that has signed the Texas First Pledge is Don Huffines. Okay, he signed it when he was running for governor. So, we have the pledge. It's available. They can sign it. You make your choice. Don Huffines is the candidate that signed the Texas First Pledge. Now, there's time for Kelly Hancock to sign it. Probably won't happen. There's time for Christy Craig to sign it. Probably won't happen. But as of right now, Don Huffines is the only candidate for Texas comptroller that has signed the Texas First Pledge. That is not an endorsement. That is merely a statement of fact. So there you go, Robert. Okay. Oh, here we go. I like this one because this is going to give me an opportunity to play a video clip. Coffee talk. That's me. Oh, hang on. It's almost me. I'm almost out of coffee. Now I'm officially out of coffee. That just happened. Okay. So here's the question. Are there any plans to establish a Texas mint for our currency, and where might that be located? I do. I always love it. When I get questions really about, it's just, it's fun to me. Like when I got to talk about the transactional gold bill, I didn't even do that. So the fact that I got a question about that and was able to use that yet again just makes me really happy. So interesting question. So when you talk about the Texas Mint, I think you have to talk about the transactional gold bill. And essentially what the transactional gold bill does, and coupled with the bullion depository, which exists, you have to look at how that system effectively operates. And what you've got is really, I think, kind of an interesting thing. So they purposely avoided, because of the relationship with the federal government in the transactional gold bill, they purposely avoided Texas minting its own coins because, according to our agreement as part of the U.S. Constitution, as being part of the United States, we don't mint, right? We don't do that. We can say, we can make gold and silver tender, right? We can make that legal tender, but we can't mint. But what's interesting about it is that it doesn't prevent people really privately minting. And I say that because if you understand how the gold depository works, you basically go in and you put physical gold in the depository. And the transactional gold system that would overlay that would be essentially create a system of transaction based on deposits in the gold depository or the bullion depository. So you really don't really have to have Texas mint anything. You just have to have a place to store it and a method of transacting it, and you effectively have a currency, because that's what they've done. So do we have a mint? No. I mean, there are a lot of private mints, right? Privately owned mints, and all those guys get certified and all that stuff. And Texas doesn't have any plans to do so, but Texas also, based off of where we're headed in the creation of our own currency and monetary system, we don't have to. So there's the answer to that question. Okay. Okay, this is a long one, and then I'm going to get back to some of the chats. This is from Bonnie. Bonnie says, "Can you please remind our members that there is an abundance of knowledge on sites like Rumble and YouTube, where anybody can teach themselves how to do just about anything for free, as well as how to start taking control of their own lives without throwing away their time, blood, sweat, tears, and dignity into the higher ed cartel racket. If we want to maintain a strong and thriving economy post-Texit, we're going to need lots of small business entrepreneurs who can build a replacement to China's cheap manufacturing. We also need more young farmers and ranchers to keep feeding us from the Texas soil. There are tons of people online sharing their skills and know-how. Don't let it go to waste before the globalist thugs try to cut off our unfettered access to these resources. Also, if there are any maker moms watching from Central Texas, hit me up. Let's collaborate." So if she says, if you know what maker moms are. If you know, I imagine Bonnie is probably in chat. Go ahead and sound off, and you guys get connected up. All right, let's get over here to these. This will be fun. Okay. Michael says, "How would you suggest dealing with these nonsensical protesters when we get our chance to vote for our renewed Republic of Texas?" Look, here's what I want to tell you. I am not, and this is maybe too nuanced for some people, but I'm going to just go ahead and say it anyway. I did not disagree with the right of the quote unquote no kings protesters to assemble and march and do those things. I did not agree with what they were marching and protesting for. I did not agree with that because, first and foremost, I don't know that anyone could decipher what it is they were trying to do other than shake their fist at Donald Trump or the administration. I mean, I don't know, right? And so it's kind of hard to say, yes, I support your aims, or, when you don't know what it is. But what I saw, I am to a certain extent opposed to, and I'll get hate mail for that, and I don't care. If you don't want me to be opposed to it, be a little more clear in your messaging next time, and maybe we'll be able to have some dialogue and discussion. Also believe that it was an exercise in futility. It literally had no point. It did nothing. Okay, so it was a total and complete waste of time. I mean, people got to let off steam. I mean, Karen got to Zumba on the south steps of the Capitol or whatever. Okay, goody gumdrops. I mean, go let off some steam or whatever. So I was not opposed to them doing. Now, what I was opposed to, and what did concern me, was that you would have the situation like you had the last time they had nonsense, like you were seeing in LA in the time leading up to the No Kings protesters, and people wanting to do things like desecrate the hallowed ground of the Alamo, or tear up our Capitol, or destroy our cities. I mean, the fact that they were having these protests, these marches in Houston, and the people were having to board their windows, the businesses boarding their windows, that crap I don't agree with, right? And so, if they can't make their point, I mean, honestly, any point would have been preferable to what they did. But don't come tear our stuff up, right? Don't come damage somebody else's property. And I got trolled by a libertarian out of New Hampshire, dealing with this issue, and he did not understand the nuance of it. He did not understand that. Look, I can look at this and go, I've got Gene Wu in the Texas House signing off on a protest on the south steps of the Capitol that has been connected to violence in Los Angeles. And, these are the same people that are talking about sending out messages saying, hey, we're going to come take back the Alamo. And so I can connect that and say, you know what, we might need to have some additional security. We may need to take a look at doing something to protect our property, and be careful if people get out of hand. He didn't get that. Why are you upset that people are sounding off and down their voices? It's like, dude, I'll tell you what, how about you take that and Gene Wu, and you guys just, hold hands, walk down the beach, and have a good time in New Hampshire, because I don't need that crap, right? When you have an Alamo that you can protect, maybe then we can talk. When you have a Capitol building that's a little bit bigger than, that is bigger than a Whataburger here in Texas, maybe then we can have a conversation. And that's no slam against New Hampshire, but it is a slam against this idea that somehow that, when it comes to these protests and all these things, that, we're told, look, I don't want people stifling what we've got to say, right? But here's the other part of it too. We've never threatened to shoot a lawmaker. We've never threatened to tear up property. We've never threatened, all of these things we have never done. Yet we get heavily persecuted. I mean, you got to remember Gene Wu, and this obviously escaped New Hampshire guy, but Gene Wu is the same guy who literally was tweeting about dropping hellfire missiles on Texas supporters, and going, oh, it's all fun and games till you get taken out by a hellfire missile. I mean, our people go to the Capitol lobby. There is a guy who is still in the Texas House that is, to this day, the only legislator that has verbally and in person threatened to murder our people, our supporters, right? Many years ago. But I've never forgotten that. So, it's kind of this hypocrisy. But look, we also have to accept this certain amount of hypocrisy from these people. They're going to always do that, but we have to be who we are supposed to be. We have to do things the right way. We cannot be the hypocrites. We have to point out their hypocrisy. And so, how would I suggest dealing with those nonsensical protesters? Look, it's kind of like a toddler throwing a tantrum. As long as they're not throwing rocks through the window and breaking furniture, then sometimes you just let those people play out. Look, something you got to understand about these folks, and it was very evident, and I'm getting into spoilery territory about the next Texas News podcast episode, but something you gotta understand about the people that protested there, they don't have the stamina. They don't have the stamina. Now, granted, I don't know a lot of people on the right have the stamina either. Given the way I see people hokey pokey, not just in the Texas issue, but in other things, they put their right foot in, they put their right foot out, they put their right foot in, shake it all about. They're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. I mean, it's I'm gonna tell you, it's enough to make you want to take Dramamine sometimes watching these people hop around. Some of these people I call political fleas, man. They hop from one dog to the next, just trying to get taken somewhere. And there is an argument to be made that maybe there's the problem, the stamina issue on the right or in what we do as well. But I'm going to tell you that the group of people that are doing the protesting at the No Kings thing, they don't have the stamina for a prolonged sort of campaign to see any real political change. So sometimes, just like a toddler, you just got to let them cry themselves out. All right, let's get over here. Ooh, I got to speed up. You guys are killing me. Okay. Okay. Enzo says, I'm a strong okay, here's the question. Okay, let me just start at the beginning. Enzo says, I'm a strong supporter of Texas independence and also a large holder of the Texan token. It's a project built with Texas values, financial sovereignty, and a clear path to community-based wealth. My question, do you see Texan token playing a role in Texas economic independence from the federal government, possibly as a decentralized reserve or community-backed asset? Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your question, Enzo. Look, I will tell you that I think that decentralized finance is absolutely the ultimate economic backstop for Texas. And while I applaud all the things that are happening at the state level to make Texas more operationally and functionally, structurally like a self-governing independent nation, just culminating in that vote for independence. I also understand that there are private-based strategies that have to be implemented as well, because at the end of the day, governments will let you down. I mean, they just will. I mean, it's the cyclical nature of history. It is the trajectory, the rise and fall of civilizations and nation states and all those things. And so, that being said, I think the Texan token as part of a decentralized finance strategy, not just in the approach to independence, but even post-independence, I think is wise and prudent. So there you go. Thank you for your question, Enzo. Okay. Alejandro says, I've had this question before. I'm gonna say it, and then I'm just gonna refer you to go back to the last time you asked this and the last time I answered it. What can you do to promise the citizens of Texas that we are not manipulated, swayed, or any way, shape, form, or fashion controlled by foreign nations? It's not my job to promise Texans that. It is the job of every Texan to be vigilant to make sure that is the case. In this, it's the same thing. This is literally the same question you sent, like, I don't know, 2-3 months ago. So go watch it, because I answered it then, and that's the answer you're going to get. Okay. Let's go here. Almost there, folks. Oh. Jimmy says 8 p.m. Texas time, because he's talking about the email that went out. Texas has 2 time zones with Hudspeth and El Paso on Mountain Time. They're pretty big parts of Texas as well, at least that area. Jimmy, I think that all of Texas should be on the same time zone. That's what I believe. And so we gotta just we gotta make it happen, right? We gotta make that happen. I don't like our state being cut like that. Okay. Glenn says, thank you for your diligence. I've been waiting for this 60 years. Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, I see things like that, and I'm like, some of you people are super impatient. You're like, well, I worked at this for a couple of years. Glenn's been waiting for this for 60 years. Right? Are you going to trump him? Right? He's still here with us. Because things take time, right? This is not popcorn. You don't get to put it in a microwave, hit 2 minutes and 22 seconds, and get fresh, buttery goodness on the other side. But what you do get on the other side is independence, right? You get a chance at self-government. Okay. Here's one. This is from Bowen. Bowen wants to know, he says, what can a 14-year-old like myself do for the party? Well, if you're talking about the organization's open, right? We're open, and we are always looking for people, regardless of their age, 14 to 84, 90, 100 years old. We don't care, right? Because Texas independence affects every one of us. The benefits will be felt by all, no matter what your age is. So the first thing I would recommend is heading over to the website. Go to tnm.me/vote and register your support. Look, you're not old enough to vote, but one day you will be. And to get steeped in what it means to be a Texas nationalist and what Texas independence can mean for future generations. The fact of the matter is that I am closer to my last sandwich than my first, but you're 14 years old. I will see less benefit from independence than you will. And so, the fact is, what we're doing right now to make independence a reality is for you and people your age, and sure, everybody else too, but you will get to experience far more of the benefits of independence than I will. And that's why we work so hard. So, look, that's what I would encourage you to take that first step. Go to tnm.me/vote, because I fear if we don't, we will be independent. It's an inevitability. But I fear for the future you will have if independence is delayed. If Glenn, who's been waiting 60 years, if we're talking about this 30 years from now, where it will be almost 60 years for me, it would be, I fear for your future. We have to accelerate the program. And so, with your help, look, anything you can, you want to help, you get connected up, you post about us, you share us. This is one thing people don't understand. They think there's some secret sauce to what we do, but so much of what we do, 80 to 90% is just connecting with other Texans and introducing them to the idea of Texas becoming an independent nation, connecting them with the organization. That's not a secret. That's not alchemy. That's not magic. It is conversations and connections and organizing and then acting and doing those things. When we did the virtual testimony for House Bill 1359, some of the best, the video testimony, some of the best recorded testimonies that were given by young people, period. They just absolutely smashed it. They knew the assignment, right? And they just absolutely killed it. And so we'd love to have you as part of what we're doing, Bowen. We'd love to, we'd love to have you be a part of the movement to make Texas a free and independent nation. So thank you so much for your question. Okay, here we go. Last question, because I'm going into overtime. Debbie asks, she says, the movement of political positions has begun. Who are you excited about? And who supports Texit? Yeah. The jockeying has begun. We have got, look, I said this, I guess maybe the last couple. We have been in campaign season for a while already, right? It has been happening for quite some time already. And all of these moves are being made. This thing with Kelly Hancock and the comptroller, and Abbott effectively just trying to circumvent one of the opinions that he wrote when he was an AG. Paxton moving, the people throwing into the AG's race, challengers rising up, against incumbents already. There was an article in Texas and Partisan today about donors stepping out to do matching for these challengers. I mean, it's active. So maybe we save this for a specific podcast episode. Yeah, I'm making a note of this. We're going to do a campaign preview podcast episode. That's happening. Okay. So we'll do that. And that'll give me a chance to really break down a lot of these because there's a lot. Who are you excited about? I think Rhonda Ward's race is going to be awesome. I think I don't know what's going to happen with. I will tell you, and I said this last time. I think I haven't seen anybody really step up to challenge, announce that they're challenging Dan Patrick or Greg Abbott. If that doesn't happen in the primaries, that leaves a lot of money on the table in their coffers for them to shore up their favorites. And that could be problematic for challengers. So that's part of a much larger conversation. But who am I excited about? That, obviously Rhonda Ward, great candidate. I mean, any of our Texas First Pledge signers, I'm excited about. And look, I would just encourage you, go to, as we get these announcements in, the Texas First Pledge page gets updated. So head over to taketexasback.com and you can see kind of who's running, who's not. You still got a lot of people that I think are thinking about it over the next couple of weeks. I'm excited about Kat Wall's race. She's in that district over there with Angela Orr. I'm excited about that race. I mean, there's some others, but we'll just dedicate a whole podcast episode to that. I think that will solve the problem. Thank you for your question, Debbie. All right, friends, that is going to be a wrap. Yeah, we're already in overtime. So here's what we're going to do. A quick reminder. I said this a moment ago, but let's do it again. A big thank you to all of our YouTube channel members who have gone in there and done the channel memberships. And, this is not like as of this second, right? Because there are now 10 new ones out there, courtesy of Mr. Ron Raffoon. So thank you so much for gifting those 10 memberships there, Ron. We'll get all those guys added. But thank you to the rest of you for helping us keep, we're just going to keep pushing out the content, giving you guys more of what you need to be able to go out there and help make Texas an independent nation. If you have not already, as I mentioned a moment ago to the young gentleman, I think, hang on, to young Bowen, sorry. Yeah. Be sure you, if you haven't already, head over to tnm.me/vote and pledge your support today. Register your support. Look, it's important. It doesn't cost you a dime. What it does is it helps us communicate with you. It helps us show the strength of the movement, but more importantly, it helps us open up additional resources to you so you can do like Bowen and help out the TNM. Additionally, look, when you do that, we create an account for you on the website. You can download the TNM mobile app. You get an account for TNM Social. It's our own internal social media network that helps us cut through the noise, right? Helps us cut directly through the big tech censorship and connect directly with you. And so be sure to do that as well if you haven't done it already. tnm.me/app. Additionally, look, we had a thing that's happening. If you did not see the email that went out and the article in the Texas Partisan, the TNM has launched a major campaign right now where we're getting ready. We're targeting in this first phase the training of 100 campaign volunteers, and we're going to need funds to make that happen. So you can go to donate.tnm.me, and I don't have a slide for this. I should have done that. I did not, but you can go to there. But instead, if you want to go straight to that effort, just do donate.tnm.me/arise, ARISE, like Texan Arise, right? But go there and make a contribution today. And you know what, my friends? That, I do believe, is going to be a wrap for tonight. And so I want to thank you so much for showing up week after week. Thank you to all of you that have become channel members, that are making contributions, that are participating, are volunteers, that are joining local groups, that are local leaders in training, brand new members of the TNM as an organization, people that are ordering from the Texian store, people that are sharing Texian partisan articles. We have a lot to be excited about. We have a lot to be excited about, and I feel there's just a change in the air, and I'm excited for it, and I'm glad you're excited as well. So that being said, I do this every time, not just because we had a question about it tonight, but I'm going to leave you with the words that I leave you with every time we're together. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.